You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is George Rivera. He's the founder and author of Buyback Time Formula. So George's job and what he's done is to, build a business that's, I guess you'd say, like a lifestyle business where he doesn't have to work, 100 hours a week to have good revenue and to have, again, both a profitable business and freedom to live your life as well. So we'll get into that formula and his background and all that stuff. Welcome, George.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Excited to be here.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background. Were you just working like crazy and you couldn't take it anymore? Like, how did you come to the realization that you had to change things? And, what's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll kind of start from the beginning. I mean, I'm a 31-year entrepreneur. I built my own supplement company from zero to over 200 million in sales, done over 400 million across my career. And about a year ago, I made a decision to stop building behind the scenes and start helping other men avoid the mistake that I almost made with my own family. And to kind of fast forward to what was my turning point is basically 2 weeks before my father passed away. He said 10 words that basically divided my whole life into before and after. He said, "Don't miss Leo's games. I missed too many of yours." And this was back in 2015. And in that moment when he said that, I was instantly back in a high school gym. About 40 games that I played, and he made it to just one of them. And I'd score a basket and I'd look up to find the empty stands while my teammates, they celebrated with their dads, when they would score. So that sentence was beautiful closure for something that I buried for like 20 years. But then the other side of it hit me. I'm version 2 of my dad, a great provider, but missing at home. And I thought to myself, this generational pattern ends here, but it had to start tomorrow because I'm working 16 hours today. And my one tomorrow turned into 3 years of tomorrows. And so that was the point when everything had to change for me. And, I was scaling my business to numbers that I never dreamed of. Again, this is 2018. And, had you told me years prior that I was going to have this type of success, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm good. I've reached the summit. But the reality is that I was hating my life, even though I was printing money. I was hating it because of what it was doing to me as far as how it impacted my family. It was robbing me from my family or my family from me. I don't know, but the net effect was the same. And I reached the point where I only have 2 options here. Either I sell the business, but that doesn't really solve tomorrow's problems because that takes years, or I could burn it down. I was well funded. I could have done it. But a mentor walked me off the ledge and he basically gave me the advice that I'm now spreading with the world. He said, stop doing what you don't like doing and keep doing what you're good at. And I had about 40 people that I thought I was delegating to, but really it was just delayed involvement. It was only a matter of time before everything came back up to me. So the first thing I did to get myself out of this, I had to audit my time. I shined a light on everything that I was doing, and more importantly, on everything that I should be doing. And then I rebuilt my role. And the result was more than doubled the business to just shy of $50 million in sales, working less than 30 hours a week, basically living semi-retired. And how my dad said, don't miss Leo's games. I never missed any one of my son Leo's games. In fact, at 8 years old, I taught him how to negotiate real estate. And even the current day, he's 11 years old, he's got a podcast. And so that's just evidence of a present dad in a child's life. So yeah, gave you plenty of the beginning there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So what were some of the methods you used? You audited your time. Like, what did that look like? Did you do 1 hour increments, 15 minute? Did you do by projects?
Yeah, it's a good question. So honestly, I just documented it as if I had a camera on me 24/7 for a couple of weeks. And I had to notate everything that I did, even if it's things that I thought I could leave out, because when you start getting critical on what should you add, what should you not add, you start to leave out things that really add up essentially. And so the first step was just documenting everything and just getting it down on paper, essentially. And then what I have next is what I call the 10K per hour filter. That's just the number that I give myself when I'm working in my zone of genius. I'm worth $10,000 an hour. But for the listener, just use that number to whatever you're worth. You could be worth 20,000 an hour. You could be worth 500 an hour. But put a number to it, and then you run everything that you've documented over the 2-week period against your dollar per value hour, and you get everything off your plate that doesn't add up to that amount. And for me, that was the first step in getting my freedom back.
All right. So you documented. What did you notice about how you were spending your time?
Yeah, it's crazy. So at the peak of the insanity for me, I was working anywhere between 80 and 90 hours a week. Like, I didn't even know there were that many hours in a week, but I seemed to find them all. And when I audited my time, I realized that 40 out of the 80 hours a week that I was working was for $50 an hour or less tasks. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but take 40 hours a week times $50 an hour equals $2,000 a week. And for a business that at the time was doing $20 million a year and essentially printing money for a couple $1,000s a week, I could buy back half of my work life, which meant, a big portion of my sanity, and give all that bought time back to my family was just a complete no-brainer. But what happened was with the other 40 hours a week, that essentially compressed down to 20 hours because now I'm working exclusively in my zone of genius. I'm more focused. I'm less stressed. I have a better mood, better energy. And that translates into making more money because I'm working on only revenue generating activities. So that's how I can reduce my work time by more than half and more than double my business and revenue is by working on things only I should be working on while you're not neglecting the things you shouldn't work on. Somebody else is doing them. And that's how I got my freedom back.
Well, again, we're jumping ahead a little bit. So you documented your time. So did you hire someone then, like an outsourced person, or how did you hand over and know what to hand over? What activities and to whom?
Exactly. So once you have that list and you've identified the things that you shouldn't be working on, essentially, there's 3 things you could do. And I call that the time liberation trifecta. And that's eliminate anything that doesn't move the needle. Things like useless, pointless meetings. There's amazing technology today that can jump on these meetings on your behalf along with somebody on your team. Automate anything that repeats. With the way AI is heading, there's not a whole lot that it can't do, that just a few short years ago we couldn't do. And then delegate. But there's a difference of delegating outcomes, which is the thing you want to do, versus delegating tasks, which is the most common way that I see people delegating. Delegating tasks is essentially what I call delayed involvement. It's just a matter of time before you get pulled in. But when you delegate outcomes, you're showing your team exactly what the outcome looks like. And the main benefit to that is it reduces context switching, which is a killer of productivity. And so, that is the process.
What does that mean? What's an example?
Yeah, context switching. So, for example,
delegating a task versus an outcome.
Okay, gotcha.
And context switching.
Absolutely, yeah. So, delegating a task might be like, here, do this one thing, and it's almost like there's no visual or example of what the outcome looks like, and the person you're outsourcing it to or whoever's on your team, they don't really know what the envision looks like. So they're constantly coming to you to say, hey, is this good? And you're being pulled in to steer them in the right direction. When you show them what the outcome looks like, they know exactly what success looks like in the project or in the task. And so that, reduces or even eliminates the random pings that cause the context switching. And the context switching is essentially when you're, in my example, I'm working on my zone of genius. I'm making strategic relationships, or I'm writing sales copy, or I'm researching new marketplaces. And then somebody, asks me a question about a project. Maybe it's a financial project or maybe it's a website or something. I'm being pulled away. I need to switch my brain from the creative zone of genius stuff that brings in revenue to now a technical issue or something that doesn't exactly bring in revenue, but it's important. It needs to be addressed. And now, okay, I handle that situation. It takes nearly 30 minutes before you can kind of get back into the gear that you were in. And sometimes that's enough time to completely get you off track. Maybe it's the end of the day. Maybe another call comes in, or maybe, your calendar is so packed that you don't have a chance to get back to it. And so, yeah, that's a context switching for you.
Okay. Which tasks are more delegatable than others? Which one, how do you know? What if you go over your tasks and you're like, only I could do this, only I can do that, only I can, I need to give input at this stage.
Yeah.
The rest of the task, yeah, okay, but not this part.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be different for every business, of course, but for founders and business owners, my advice to them, what I do with clients is you need to be working on just activities that bring in revenue for the business, not supporting the business. And so anything else that doesn't bring in revenue is likely not going to meet that 10K per hour filter or whatever number that is for the specific listener. It's likely not going to meet that criteria. And so that's how I determine what it is that I should be doing versus what I should be delegating. And again, it's very, very, unique and custom for each business. But, like, for example, it's very important that, for my online company that we have, beautiful imagery, beautiful graphics and websites and great content on there. So yes, that's very important. And that does support the revenue that comes in. But, my time can't be spent in trying to, micromanage our graphics designer or micromanage our content team, because that's getting me stuck in the business. I should be out there making strategic relationships and entering new marketplaces so that the team has things to focus on based on the work that I'm doing versus me jumping in and supporting the team. So again, every business will have their unique things, but I just try to keep it to revenue generating activities versus supporting those activities.
Well, do people even know what those are? Do they have a good instinct for it or what?
Yeah. So again, every business is different, but they should be able to determine what that is just based on whether it moves the revenue or not. And for me, it's strategic relationships. It's the zone of genius activities. It's the expertise that the founder has. And yeah, that's the first way that you determine on what exactly is that you should continue to work on.
Oh, what else would help? What about the 80-20 rule, or, what other provisos do you use to help you determine, all right, I'll delegate this, not that?
Yeah. So there's some other criteria you can use. Like, first, does the activity move the needle? Is it something that I enjoy doing? Should I continue to be doing? So yeah, there's other factors in there, but I just continue to go back to whether or not it's something that fits into my zone of genius, and is it something that I should be doing? And one of the things that kept me stuck in the founder prison, as I call it, is just believing that I was the best at doing any one certain task, and really that was just a lie that kept me stuck there. And it wasn't until I broke out of that I really experienced my freedom.
Well, that's another question too. What is your zone of genius? How do I identify that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe it's something unique for every founder, but every business owner should remain focused on any activity that's going to bring in more revenue for the company. It's just.
But what does that mean? Does that mean what you're uniquely good at? Like, people tell you, think about something that people tell you quite a bit. Oh, you're really good at X, Y, Z. Is that your zone of genius, or how do you know it?
Yeah, I think it's something that people could identify. It also, I believe, has to do with a place that you're actually, content at the activity. So I've met founders who are actually good at something, but they it just sucks the life out of them, and they don't enjoy doing it. So I think at some point they have to, optimize for enjoying what they do, and all of this really leads into how their life at home could be. And so it's a matter of just prioritizing essentially what's important to them. And I know some people aren't in the position where they could determine okay, doesn't matter if I enjoy it or not. I need to be doing this task. And so yeah, I think it's a subjective thing. It also depends on where they are, in their life and in their business at the time.
What about checklists or standard operating procedures?
Yeah.
How do those interface with what you do?
Absolutely. So my favorite part to incorporate, SOPs and checklists is when you're delegating with ownership. You're showing them what the outcome looks like and essentially delegating the outcome. What I like to do is use a screen share recorder. A tool like Loom is kind of the flavor of the day. And you go through the task, and then you take the transcript that Loom is going to produce for you. And then you take that over to ChatGPT or your favorite AI tool, and you ask it to make you a wonderful SOP. It's very hands-free these days to create something like that. And then you want to review it, because the AI will get you 95% there, but there could be a little intricacy that it doesn't catch that could make the difference between success or failure in the outcome. And so you make sure you review it. And then what I do is I take that SOP that it produced, put it on a Google Doc, and then I'll attach a link. I'll paste the link to the Loom video there. Then the person that I'm assigning it to, I'll say, look, I got 10 minutes or 30 minutes, however long it takes to communicate this. And I'll say, watch it right now, follow the steps, and let me know if it's clear or if you have any questions. And oftentimes they'll look at it and understand it. And I'll say, all right, this is your task. You own this. I've shown you what the outcome looks like. I'm giving you ownership. I'm giving you guardrails, defining what the boundaries are. So if there's like a budget associated with that, you could tell them to, spend up to this amount. And if it exceeds this much, then you can reach out to me. But if it doesn't, then, you have complete ownership. You see what the outcome looks like. And then I tell them this, you own it. This shouldn't come back up to me unless we change a strategic vendor or part of our strategy changes. And then in order to keep the lines of communication open, because you don't just want to like dump it on them and leave, is have a structured, sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it could be bi-weekly or even monthly, but you want to have a structured cadence where they can bring, questions, concerns, or suggestions to you in a timely fashion. And again, the goal is to reduce the context switching that really hurts productivity.
Well, how are you doing this before? Were you just saying, hey, Bob, can you get this done for me? Thanks, bye. Like throw papers on his lap. How has your method of delegation changed to become more effective now?
Absolutely. And if I'm looking back, I thought that I was giving some sort of, actionable steps that they can follow. But I was never showing them what completion looked like. And I'd hire them, and oftentimes based on their ability to do the job, maybe it was a good job description. And a lot of times I just assumed, and wrongly so now looking back, having the ability to really look back and be critical, is I was just under the assumption that they would take the task and pretty much own it. But again, like I said earlier, I would just delegate the task. I wouldn't give them the outcome, and essentially it might as well just be called delayed involvement, because I'd be kept getting looped in for, is this good? Do I have the ability to do this and that? And it wasn't until I put in guardrails and a structure that really changed and streamlined things.
You needed to define what you wanted done a lot more clearly, it sounds like. Is there a short checklist of, what needs to be defined to effectively delegate a task where it won't come back on you and suck up your time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of recapped it a little bit, but yeah, it's essentially providing them an SOP and then giving them the guardrails, if you are going to approach me with something, what have you done? What have you tried? What other options are there? And that forces them to think, and that'll eliminate, maybe not totally eliminate, but it'll reduce the random pings or what have you, at least save them for true emergencies versus, hey, I have a question and getting interruptions. And then again, you've got the structured, the weekly cadence or bi-weekly or what have you for them to bring their concerns or questions and comments regarding the process. But yeah, that's how that works.
What's hard about this process? I'm sure you've taught it to others. Where do you see people like, George, I'm just not getting it, or it's not working, or does it work every time? Like, what's been your experience in teaching people?
Absolutely. So it's definitely something that takes practice to do. The system itself works. And I could say it works every time when you stick to it. The challenge is people sticking to it. And sometimes it comes down to an identity issue. I just know when I was first implementing this, it took a little bit of time to stick to it, because I'm used to being the guy that jumps in. You have a problem? Yeah, George is here to solve it, and part of the identity that I have as an entrepreneur is a problem solver and saving the day. It feels pretty good to save the day. But in effect, it's poor leadership. Honestly, I wasn't training my team how to think on their own and solve issues on their own. So, one of the things that I see most founders do when they don't succeed at this, at least early on, is that they keep getting roped in, and you're training your team that, hey, the roles don't really mean anything. And over time, you sort of slip back into the old way of doing business, which is, there's a reason why we implemented these guardrails and these frameworks. And if you don't stick to them, they can kind of revert back to the old way.
Yeah. How often? So you put a procedure in place and, someone does the task. Do you go back to that procedure and revisit it, every 6 months or a year to make sure things haven't changed and the procedure is still working like it should, or input from the doer of the task? All right, Bob, you've done this now 100 times. Anything, you see we should add, eliminate, rearrange, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there are those kind of cadence meetings for those specific type of issues and to visit, does something need updating? Are there questions? And then there's other more like formal meetings to discuss like, how the process is working. Is this still effective? And usually that would be done like with the executive team, and every company is going to have a different structure. It could be smaller. So you could just have these meetings directly with your people. In my case, when I had a team of about 40 people working directly beneath me, one of the first things that I did was I implemented an executive structure so that instead of 40 people reporting to me, it was just 4 people reporting to me. And then a number of those 40 people sort of rolled up to the executive team, and we tightened things up pretty good. So once a week, I have a meeting with my executive team, and they essentially would report, issues, concerns, or status updates from, essentially from the entire organization. And at that point is when we would, keep tabs on the procedures to make sure that they're working as we intend them to.
I know in organizations, do you have to do this with all procedures? Can you do like a subset? How extensive and how long does this process take?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably different for every business. In my case, it took me about 6 months to set up like version 1 of this. And it's just because when you have a company or a team that's worked in one form or fashion for several years, it could be almost like turning a boat around in the middle of the ocean. It's not exactly an overnight kind of thing. But yeah, for me, it all started to turn once I got a leadership team in place. A lot of those people came from the organization that I already had, and gave them structure and authority, and just sticking to a process that we established. We all agreed that this is the way we're going to go. And yeah, so I'd say it took about 6 months for version 1. These days, having worked with a number of clients on this process, I'd say again, it just depends on the company, the team size, or what have you. But usually in a couple of months, certainly in the first 3 months, our goal is to get version 1 up, and it could be plus or minus, again, based on factors that we might not know right at the moment. But the goal is to get it working quickly and sticking to it and abiding by the guardrails that we put in place.
Are there any industries that are more amenable to this than others? What if you have like outsourcers and you're a distributed team versus like everyone's sitting in an office?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, so my team is 100% outsourcers. And so, in my case, it worked beautifully. I believe the same principles can apply in an in-person office, kind of the more traditional way of doing business, especially before the internet or before the kind of remote working culture. I say that's more popular now. But yeah, I don't think it really high level. I don't think it depends. I know, or that it matters. I think it's going to be a case by case basis, but applicable, I believe, across the board pretty generally.
So what's reasonable? What's doable? Like, we've had from many years ago, Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. I would probably consider that unreasonable for most people. You said you're like under 30. So if someone's working, 60 hours a week, what would be reasonable for them if they systematize properly? How many hours would they have to work? I know it's different for every business.
Yeah.
The ballpark.
Yeah. I'd say my goal is to get it towards 30 or under. And one of the ways that we do that is we structure the calendar to where you're only working 30 hours a week. And that forces you to essentially be more productive in the hours that you do have. One of the common excuses, and I know it because I've said it a million times, is, I don't have time. But it's really a matter of prioritizing and structuring your day and structuring your calendar so that you can be more efficient with it. And so when you structure your calendar to be 30 hours a week, that's going to put a spotlight on all of the things that you shouldn't be doing. And you'll naturally, by force, essentially, because we're sticking to the calendar, be prioritizing your time, making it more efficient and cutting out things that shouldn't be there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's more reasonable again than, I don't know, sit at home, do nothing.
Yeah.
And everything runs for you. But given that, if you look at some of your students, I'm sure you followed some of their successes. Like, I don't know, what's an example of like a typical success and then maybe one that's like an outlier? Like, wow, this student really like embodied this and they dramatically improved their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. First, the client has to have a reason why, and if there's no reason why, then the motivation part is really hard to get down and hard to have something that sticks to. A lot of the people that gravitate towards me and my advisory are people that, they're successful on paper. They have a business that, is making money and they're good there, but they're time poor. They don't have the time for the important things in life. Their business gets all the time and the family gets the leftovers. And so oftentimes these are the founder dads that'll realize that they're not living up to their expectation or the expectations they have for themselves in their home. The wives are planning a life without them, whether they literally leave or not. It's just, hey, we can't trust them to be around because the business always comes in and takes over. And so kind of starting from that standpoint, for me, the what equals success is when that they can restore their bond and reconnect back home with their family. And when we structure a calendar that's 30 hours max or less, then you use the time that we bought back. You give that to your family. And, working with me, it's not like, hey, we're going to get your time back and good luck. We'll figure out what else to do with your time. Like if you're working with me, it's because you're intentional about reconnecting with your family as well. So there's frameworks and there's structure to getting the bond going back in the right direction with your family. And so that's my measure of success is when we can bring dad back home into the picture versus usually their current state when they first meet me.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Again, any when people free up their time, because of your system, they get down to like 30 hours a week or less. What does their time look like? Do they tend to take off Fridays, leave early, or do they work a little less each day, or do they work 4 days a week? 32 hours would be, let's say 40 hours, 4 days a week, 8 hours a day. But what does their time look like? How do they tend to chop it up? Yeah.
Typically speaking, it's they do have a day off. And interesting enough, I've noticed that Mondays is the day that they choose, which seems to make sense because Mondays typically is the most stressful day for most founders that I've noticed. And I can relate to that because that was the big stressful day for me. And so when I was able to take Mondays off, it was, to me, it signified that, hey, I've made it to the good life because the rest of the world is stressing out today. And that's what I noticed, that they prioritize, either off or a light day on Monday. And naturally, others will also take off on Fridays. I've also had some that compress it into a 3 days. So yeah, I've seen it in all forms, shapes, and sizes. But I would say either Monday or Friday seems to be the favorite day to take off once they structure their calendar.
What do you do? How do you structure your week?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually, on a Sunday, I'll determine what are the priorities for the week. Is there any travel coming up? Do I have any, outlier type events that could potentially alter something in my calendar? What I do is I ferociously guard my weekends for my family. And so it is very rare that I have anything in the weekend that pulls me away for business purposes. But yeah, Sunday evening is kind of when I start looking ahead. And yeah, Monday is at best, it's an extremely light day, but I'm definitely not doing anything seriously on Monday. And I put all of my activities from Tuesday through Thursdays primarily. And then Friday is for, fun, enjoyable stuff like podcasts and networking. Actually, Fridays, I love to just meet with people and that's how I expand my network. And so, yeah, that's a typical week for me. I leave the, most of the quote, harder work for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Okay. So where are you headed with this? Is it going to become like your major consultancy? Are you going to leave your business or, what are your plans for it?
Yeah. So, like I said, about a year ago, I kind of stopped doing the behind the scenes stuff, building direct response companies. And now I'm just helping other men avoid the mistake that I almost made with my own family. I feel like it's a calling in my life to do that. My heart breaks for the little boy or the little girl that's wondering, where the heck is my dad and why is he not here? Or why is work more important? They might not say that, but they're like, why is whatever he's doing more important than me? And so yeah, I've determined to get the message out. I had to adopt it for myself. When my dad said, don't miss Leo's games, first it was for me. I had to adopt it. It took me years. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, my dad's message could be one for the world to hear. And so getting on awesome podcasts like yours and just to get the word out. And this is what I plan to do with the rest of my life. I feel like this is where I need to be.
That was really cool. Very cool. Yeah. All right, George. Well, let's restate the name of your book and where can people get it?
Yeah, it's called Buyback Time Formula. And yeah, if anything that we talked about resonated today, day, especially, the feeling of being successful on paper but missing at home. I put together a free 3-step guide to help you win back dinner, bedtime, and weekends without slowing the business down. And that's just a gift for your listeners. You can grab it free at buybacktimeformula.com/3steps. And there, you can learn about how to get the book and all the other stuff that we're doing over here.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, George, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's really cool what you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Richard. It's been fun.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
Thank you for listening to the Good Question Podcast. Please email support@thegoodquestionpodcast.com if you have any referrals to great guests for us to interview. Visit thegoodquestionpodcast.com to hear more interviews. And please help us spread the word by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to this podcast.